It's episode 78 of the Author Stories podcast. I'm your host, Hank Garner. Find all the archives of the show at hankgarner.com. It's a new year, and I hope everything is going your way so far. We're breaking from the format a little bit this week to bring a special type of episode to you. This will be the first of many where I get to talk with authors and we dig a little deeper into their creative process and their workflow, and to give the writers out there that are listening a little better glimpse at kind of the day-to-day workings of different writers. So I hope you enjoy this episode. One of the things I'm most excited about getting to do this show is I meet lots and lots of great people. And Stefan Bolz is one of those people that I met early on in this podcast. I'm happy to call him my friend, and I've learned a lot from him, and I hope you will too. Visit hankgarner.com, click on the Amazon link, do your shopping there, and it helps the show. Also, if you don't mind, click on the iTunes link and leave a review. Now on to the show. Thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories podcast. I'm your host, Hank Garner, and today I have one of my very good friends on the show with me. Stefan Bolz joins me from sunny New York State, and I'm glad to have Stefan on the show. This is probably about the fourth time Stefan has been on the show, maybe fifth. I can't keep track. But we're breaking from the format a little bit today. You know, Author Stories typically is me interviewing a writer and kind of digging into what makes them a writer, and that sort of thing, and talking about their history and that sort of thing. But once a month, we're going to break from the format, and I'm going to talk with one of my friends about the craft of writing, and we're going to have a more in-depth conversation about how things work and where ideas come from and how you go from idea to finished product and all of that sort of stuff. So for the first one of these, I couldn't think of anyone better than Stefan Bolz to join me. So welcome to the show, Stefan, again.
Thanks, Hank. I appreciate it.
I feel like we should be eating calzones or something. We do this. Yeah. But So a few months ago, Stefan was down visiting some family. He came down to the south, and my family and I drove a few hours over to go meet him, and we met
It was awesome.
at a pizza place and had calzones, and it was awesome. Yeah, it was pretty awesome. So
you brought all seven of you.
I know, right? We roll deep when we do.
You did. It's like, oh my God, who else is coming out of that van?
Yeah, we like to have a sort of intimidation factor when we show up.
I wanted to run at first, but then I thought, you know what? Now I'm here. Yeah. I can't just not meet everybody, and it was great.
Well, great. When there's seven of you, you can circle the wagons if you need to.
True.
Yep. Yeah. So anyway. So the last time you were on the show by yourself, we were talking about the White Dragon. Genesis had just come out, and we were talking about that. What has been going on with you in the probably 6 months or so since that happened?
Let me think. That was probably April-ish.
Yeah, it's more than 6 months, I guess.
May. Yeah. I have been working on the second one of the White Dragon, the Crucible.
Nice.
I've also written two short stories. One was for, I think, if I'm not mistaken, maybe I have worked on that before, Chris Porteau's Tales of the Apocalypse. I think it was either just finished or I was working on it. I can't remember. And then I was writing one for Sam Peralta's Shapeshifter Chronicles. That's done, and now I'm kind of back to the White Dragon Crucible to finish that. I think I'm going to need another month to do that, and then I started the short story The Traveler in also Sam's Time Travel Chronicles. I'm writing a screenplay about it. And so I'm going back and forth between the two. It's really nice to completely change the format and go in a completely different direction. One is a real fantasy story, the White Dragon, and The Traveler is a very, except for the very end, is a very normal small town America story. So it's really cool to kind of switch the mood. If whatever mood I'm in, I can switch between the two, which is really helpful. Because before I was always, if I'm not working on one, I wasn't able to work on that day, I wasn't able to do anything else. And now I can kind of switch and change not only the content, but also the very format of the screenplay is so different. So it's really a cool balance of the whole thing, actually.
So you actually are kind of in three different modes. You're in novel mode, you're in short story mode, and you're in screenplay mode.
Right.
Tell me, in your mind, how do you approach those? Well, first off, let's talk short story versus novel, because the screenplay is coming out of a short story, and I know that you have much more experience with screenplays that you've done in the past, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But for right now, novels versus short stories, how do you approach those in the beginning? And, when you have an idea, if you're like me, I'm kind of assuming that you are, but if you're like me, well, you know what, I'm not going to make any assumptions. When I get an idea, things come from crazy places, and I'll get little nuggets of ideas, and I'll just kind of let them kind of ruminate and stew for a while, and they kind of grow into a story. For you, how do you know when an idea comes, if it's a short story, if it's a novel, or do you approach these, like if someone says, we have a short story anthology coming up, we would like you to contribute something.
Right.
Kind of tell me the difference in those scenarios and how those play out in your mind, and how they inform what you're going to write.
It does come from that crazy place that we all kind of come from as writers, and it's sometimes hard to imagine when at the outset what it's going to be later. I think it has to grow a little bit and get some substance going, and then you can kind of see if it has more to it and it can become a novel. Or, for example, The Protector I wrote for Chris Porteau's Tales of the Apocalypse, I knew from the very start that it was a short story and it would not be anything else, because it has a very definite ending and there was just nothing to add to it. It was a complete story in itself, and I knew that from the first page. Now with The Traveler, for example, it started out as a short story because I had this idea of this young girl that loses her dad, and then she's an apprentice in her dad's blacksmith shop, and I had this idea that what if he has this secret drawer somewhere, and he leaves her behind a notebook filled with plans and a manual to build a time machine. And she's 13 or 14 years old, and she has to now build this time machine in order for her to get back to her dad. So that was also a story. I thought it was a short story, but now as it changes into a screenplay, that will become hopefully between 90 and 100 minutes of a full movie. Even though the structure was there, I know I can flesh it out enough to make it really interesting throughout. You just have to add one or two storylines parallel to the main storyline, and then you basically have it. But it's really sometimes in the beginning you know it right away, and you probably have the same experience that you know sometimes there's the seed and you can get, it's a short story, and sometimes you think, oh, that's nothing, and 3 months later it comes back and you're like, oh my god, this is a 5 novel,
right.
epic thing. So I don't know. And what you mentioned before we started talking, the unconscious knows, or the subconscious knows way more than you do. I think that's the whole thing, is to be watchful for that. Where does it go? Don't stop it, but also don't force it. It's kind of like be present with what's coming up, and then see where it wants to go. Basically, we're slaves to the story.
Yeah.
Going on.
When you start thinking about these stories, for you, does a short story have to have a definite end, or do you think leaving the reader sort of dangling at the end is a good idea? Like, do you think things need resolution, or is it better to let the reader kind of come to their own conclusions?
I think you can probably do both. I feel like, for me, I like to have an ending that has a satisfactory emotional arc, and an ending that kind of satisfies the reader and satisfies the main character, unless I know it'll continue on to another. Maybe it's just like 5 episodes, like the writer's block that you're working on. You have a couple of others, so you can leave it somewhere and pick it up again. But for the ones I wrote so far, they had a definite ending, and I like that. I like the compressed arc of the short story, because you can, in 20 pages, 30 pages, you can transmit the emotions that are in a novel. You can do that in a short story, and I think, for me, just personally, I like an ending that is an ending that, like, "Whoo, that was awesome," or "Wow, okay," but I would have written it very differently. But I like the idea of an arc with an ending.
You just said sometimes you'll read something and go, I'd have done that differently. As a writer yourself, do you find it hard sometimes to just enjoy things? Are you always critiquing and trying to kind of unravel the sweater to see how it was made? I know a lot of people that are film directors I've talked to, and they say, I can't enjoy movies anymore because I know how the sausage is made, and I'm constantly thinking, I wonder what lens they used there. I wonder how they lit this scene. And when you start working on things every day, do you lose some of the joy of just being a fan?
I don't, but I think the people that are with you, because I see myself, I catch myself all the time. We're in a movie theater, and I whisper over to Amy, "This is the midpoint. This is the point of no return. You see?
Right.
End of Act 1, right there." And I can see Amy's like, smiling, and it's like, okay, I got it.
Yeah, would you shut up?
Shut up and enjoy it. But it's true in a way you can't, especially with movies and writing the screenplays and having gone into that subject pretty deep. It's hard to miss it, and I think it's a good thing that you recognize it. That always makes the movie like, if it has a definite end of Act 1, beginning of Act 2, midpoint, point of no return, Act 3 starts, this is the climax is starting. That's a good movie.
Right.
If you don't see that, then if it come kind of like, I don't know what is this about. So it's a double-edged sword. I enjoy it actually a little more, I have to say, because of that. Because I can say, yes, they did it, and it's like, I like it.
Kind of in the way a craftsman can go to, maybe a shop or some sort of artisan shop and appreciate the craftsmanship that goes into something.
Right.
And that same sort of, like, I recognize your talent, I recognize your artistry, and I tip my hat to that.
Right.
Gotcha.
And you learn. I mean, there's so much
Which,
to learn every
right.
movie. You know, how they did that scene, how they built up. Like if you watch a Quentin Tarantino movie, you know, all those individual scenes are so beautiful pieces of art. I mean, you know, everybody talks about the first scene in Inglourious Bastards when they
Oh yeah.
when they come to the French countryside. I mean, a brilliant, even an arc in that one scene. You know, the desperation is growing, and you know where it's going, but you're kind of glued to it. So you learn so much if you watch it or read.
And so much dialogue. He crams so much dialogue into his movies that other people would just seem pretentious, but he has he matches that with visuals and it's great, you know.
Did you? I don't know if you remember the end of Kill Bill 2, when David Carradine is making the sandwiches.
Yeah.
And it's like a 15-minute scene in which they talk about the daughter and blah blah blah, and he's making the sandwiches, and I was wondering how often they had to shoot this scene with the sandwiches, with the mustard and the ham and cheese and everything, and he's talking, and all of a sudden the 5-pronged death grip comes out. You know, I'm like, oh my god, how much better! It's impossible to get, you know, from the mundane to this incredible, like, whoa, tied the whole movie together. You know, those are brilliant. You know, just in awe of that stuff.
Absolutely. What made you first want to write a screenplay? What made you want to, get into that odd medium of writing that will then be turned into visual?
I think I was starting a story way back when, I think it was 2000 or 1999, starting it as a novel that played a little bit in my hometown and kind of magical realism and stuff, but I realized that I saw everything in camera angles. I saw, for example, I would go into our old Volkswagen, you know, in the back seat, and we would drive through the countryside, and I would envision me on a horse riding next to the car if I would be bored, or on a motorcycle, or fly next to the car. And I would always see it all of a sudden the camera would move to the front of the Volkswagen and then up, you know, like an aerial shot. Then point of view from me flying next to it, you know. So I realized that it's really more in camera angles, and I would see it in movie form. So I switched the format from the novel. I started to take some classes in screenwriting and books, and started just writing it as I saw it. Not so much description of, more condensed description and dialogue, just more scenes than novel style. So that was I think the idea in the beginning.
Gotcha. I saw you post a photo on Facebook the other day where you had a stack of screenplays, and that I can't remember the caption, but it was, you know, something to the effect of, you know, studying other people's work, to better learn the craft. What's your favorite screenplay that you've read?
Okay, so when I did the classes, I did this really amazing class with David Freeman. He does classes in New York City and in LA, and I was lucky enough to be in the New York City class. And he does techniques, and he used American Beauty. That was amazing. And the Shawshank Redemption, I think, and Jerry Maguire. So those three I think he used. My favorite script is the West Wing scripts. I think the first 5, and then I had another book with another second season, a couple of scripts, but those are just, from the music of the dialogue, it is so amazing that it makes so much sense to do it like he does it, Aaron Sorkin. And that, I think that was my favorite. Those are my favorite scripts, the West Wing first season.
Aaron Sorkin may be the best screenwriter living.
I agree with you.
he has, I don't even know how you describe it. And he obviously, and I saw an interview with him not long ago where he talked about acting out the dialogue as he's writing it.
Right.
And his wife coming in and thinking that he was going berserk or something. And he's
Right,
like, "No,
right.
I'm writing. Leave me alone." You know? It was hilarious. But is there in studying the way he writes, and we've all watched things that he's written, but in studying the actual words and being able to see it written out and seeing the cadence of dialogue and the are there any tips that you've been able to pick up from him? Can you feel any of that influence in your writing after studying that?
Yes, I definitely can. And you can't do it all the time, but there's one technique that I really I like a lot, and that is repeating one of the words that the other person has said. And you can do that like 2 or 3 times. And there are a bunch of scenes in The West Wing that have that technique, and it's so beautifully done. And it has such an impact. And I would say to you, so you brought the car to the shop, and then the guy said, "There's nothing you can do." And then you said, "No, I didn't bring the car to the shop. I went to the movie theater instead." And I say, "But you told me several times you brought the car to the shop." So you repeat 1 or 2 words of what the other person says, and that connects the dialogue in such a beautiful way. And you can add dramatic elements to it. You can add any kind of romantic, or also intensify what the character wants in that moment. And it's like a bouncing back and forth like a tennis match. And it's if you can do it right, it's not easy to do. That's one of the really great techniques that I learned from his dialogue.
In The West Wing specifically, there are some of those scenes where they're in the Oval Office, and President Bartlett has his senior advisors around him, and they're bouncing ideas. They're maybe discussing a major crisis or something. And you're absolutely right. When you think back on that, there's a theme, and the characters pass this theme around the circle, and they'll take each other's words, and it's like a game of badminton where they're all keeping the birdie in the air as they pass that chunk of dialogue around. That's fascinating that I guess I noticed it, but I didn't know that I noticed it until I thought about it. That's something to watch for. Great piece of advice. One piece of advice that you always hear from writers that they give to aspiring writers is if you want to be a great writer, you need to read a lot and you need to write a lot. How do you read other writers' work without just repeating the things they say and the way they say them? How do you take another writer's influence without just becoming a copycat and a mimic of them?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think what you need to do is you kind of establish your own voice. You have to kind of more and more over time, over writing, become clear on who you are and what your voice is. And then I think you can do anything, and it will always be individually your specific like tone or you know what I mean. It's kind of I was doing acting for a while, like theater acting, and I did some acting lessons, and I had a really, really brilliant acting coach, Sandy Shireen, and she always says, you are not Matt Damon. You are not. And everybody in the beginning like, darn it, but I want to be Matt Damon. And she says, why the hell would you want to be Matt Damon? Matt Damon is already there. You don't want to be the second Matt Damon. You will always be the second Matt Damon. But you can be the first and only whoever you are. So your individual signature, your individual voice, I think is the most important thing. And then, yes, we take everything that we possibly can kind of absorb in the outside world as writers and put them in the stories. But if you filter it through your own unique individual voice that nobody can possibly replicate, I think you are way ahead. Because if you try to copy somebody, you can't, because you're not the other person. You can study. I can study Aaron Sorkin until I'm blue in the face. I will never, ever be even close to what he does, because that's his own blueprint. It's like a DNA. It's like two snowflakes. They can't be the same.
Yeah.
So if I come close to my voice and get that out with anything I want, basically I can do, then it's my own.
There's a great example of that in a movie that I really enjoy, and the movie's a little hokey. I'll give you that, but it's called Finding Forrester, and it came out, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 years ago. I don't remember.
Is it with Faulkner?
Faulkner? No, it's Finding Forrester, and it has Sean Connery plays an old reclusive man who lives in an apartment in a building that's in a less than desirable neighborhood in New York, and all of the local kids are scared of him. Mm-hmm. He never comes out of his apartment, and this one kid who lives in the neighborhood, who is it has throughout the years become a low income neighborhood, mm-hmm. and this kid is playing basketball, and his ball, I can't remember exactly how it happens. Anyway, he winds up in the old guy's apartment, like some of the kids dare him to break into the apartment, and he leaves his ball there. Well, anyway, you come to find out the old man gets the kid to come in, and you find out that the old man is a writer who wrote, what everyone hailed as the great 20th century novel, but then just disappeared, just fell off the face of the earth, and was kind of imprisoned by his success and his fame and whatever. So anyway, he discovers that the young kid is a prodigy and is much smarter than he lets on that he is. Because he still wants to fit in with his neighborhood kids. He doesn't want to be looked at as, the guy that stands out. But he really is this kind of this genius. And so the old fella is teaching him to write, and he just couldn't find his voice. So what the old guy did is pulled out one of his essays and said, "Start typing my essay. Just type what I typed word for word, and then when your voice comes, just let it take over." And I thought that was great. That was I think a lot of times we take in our influences, and we do start by kind of mimicking what they do. But if you trust yourself, your voice will take over. Eventually, I think that's part of just becoming a writer, is that you've got to practice. You've got to do it until it becomes you. Right.
Yeah, Amy does the same. She's going to art school right now, back to college, and they're doing a lot of painting and drawing, but they, you copy one of the masters, like a Monet or something, and then in doing that, you learn the technique, but you also start to add your own individual imprint on it, and I think that's a great way of learning it.
Yeah. Do you think that writing different genres, do you think that you can maintain your unique voice across genres and across different mediums?
My characters always seem to end up in a cave. So I'm gonna try a romantic, like a love story, and I'm afraid they're gonna end up somewhere in a catacombs, like way deep under the earth in another cave. But I think it's cool to, if you find your niche and you're good at it and you want to just keep going with the same one, I think that's great. But I feel like I want to explore, like, everything that's out there. You know, I want to do a little horror, like the Shapeshifter one, The Night of the Hunted, is like a horror short story, and I totally loved it. Got me right back to the Stephen King times in my 20s, and it was awesome. And so I want to go into that a little bit. I want to definitely write a love story. I have one already that I wrote as a screenplay, but I wanted to make it into a novel. And the sci-fi and the fantasy, and then some kind of how do you call it? Like everything together, like with poetry, story, and then mix the genres up a little bit. It doesn't, you know, I feel like it doesn't have to be one genre. It can be 3 or 4, you know,
right.
all in one.
One piece of advice that you hear from successful writers, especially indie writers who are pursuing their writing as a career, you know, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be
right.
successful at it, is to not confuse your audience and to stick
right.
with what people expect from you. I don't necessarily. Well, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that. I do agree that if you want to keep selling copies of product A, you need to keep providing copies of product A. But you know, some of the stuff I write is kind of all over the map, and I hope that people will learn to appreciate an author's voice and kind of their way of storytelling, and will follow you no matter what genre you go to. You obviously have a desire to dip your pen into many inkwells. What are your thoughts about that?
I agree with you. And if I look at, for example, Susan K. Quinn, right, or Meg Jensen, that they're very successful indie authors. They have they found the place, or the playground they want to be in, and explore that with the wholeheartedness and go for it, and that's very successful. I don't know. I maybe I should do it, or maybe we should do it, but I can't. I don't know. I don't feel like I'm at home only in that one medium. I want to explore it, and if that's at the cost of, you know, being more successful, then so be it. But I feel like I want to get all of me into that, all the aspects that are possible into that medium.
When you're writing in different genres, for instance, the White Dragon is very much fantasy. I guess I don't even know what subgenre you would classify it as, other than modern fantasy. It's urban fantasy mixed with that then dives into kind of this high fantasy and you know, epic fantasy, you know, all kinds of stuff. And then you've got you know, the Three Feathers, which is a straight out fable, and the Fourth Sage, which is kind of dystopian sci-fi. And then, you know, you've got horror, and you've got time travel and shifter. Do you approach those differently? In the beginning, do you think, okay, this one is going to have magic, so how do I, you know, craft a story that can carry this sort of tone? Or, you know, I'm going to write a book about you know, an overreaching corporate entity that is controlling the world, you know. So do you approach those differently, or does it just kind of organically grow out of the seed of an idea that you have?
I think it's very organic. I think the first one I was really planning out now was the screenplay for The Traveler, because I already had the story and I was putting it on cards in the screenplay format, on like 4x6 cards on the computer, and then from there write each scene one after the other. So that's seemingly not very, very organic, but I think for me the organic works because I always think that the emotion or whatever I write has to carry the emotion the characters are feeling. And it could be the emotion that a landscape has, like an amazing cliff that is like, with a bottomless lake, or something that is kind of has an emotional impact, just the image of the landscape. But for me, it has to that, and that's kind of my guide. And then I'm also not a fast writer. I write and then I don't write it for 2 days, and I kind of go out with my dog and I listen to Dragon Force or whatever, and then it comes back, and more stuff that kind of comes up to the story, as you know. Yeah. And so it is a very, very organic, and it's more like, I think if it impacts me emotionally, it can be in. If it doesn't impact me, I can't. It's almost like I can't write it. I mean, it doesn't have to be all emotionally that carries an emotion. It can be like action sequences and stuff, but it has to always come back to that. And I think that's kind of my guiding principle. What are the characters? What are they experiencing right now? Is it possible for me to convey that to the reader so that the reader has the exact same experience that I have at this moment, and the reader has the same one? And then I think I'm on the right track. And wherever it goes, I mean, with the Three Feathers, the fable, there was really, I mean, it's a fable, Mm-hmm. The only reason it had touched so many people was because I was able to trust that the emotional impact can be the same or even more if animals go through something than humans. And there was nothing of that was planned at all.
Wow. What is it, do you think, that appeals to people about these fantastical stories? Maybe it's a fable with talking animals. Maybe it's a fantasy story where a girl taps into some ancient magic. Maybe it's a story where a man finds a magic typewriter at a garage sale. What is it, do you think, that appeals to people about these things? Why do you think we love to read stories about things that are bigger than us, deeper mm-hmm. than we see on a daily basis? Do we secretly hope that there's some magic behind it all?
I think it's that part of us is kind of aware how limited our lives are and how limited our awareness is of our environment and other people. And I think those stories bring us in touch with that part that knows that there's so much more to us and to everybody and to this world, so that we only see such a small amount, and those stories where all of a sudden all the limitations are being lifted and we can go with the character and experience that freedom of limitations where somebody, like Superman, oh my God, he can fly, or right. whatever those limitations are that are being completely blown out of the water with those stories, if it's magic or fantastical things that happen, or basically just going outside of yourself to just expand your horizon in one way or another. I think that's what we all yearn for, very deeply in us. And if a story captures that, then we can so identify with it that it helps us a little bit to just stretch those boundaries, 1 inch a little bit more each time.
Gotcha. Stefan, what was your favorite book when you were a child? or in your formative years, what was that first book that you read and said, "Oh my God, this affected me in some way"?
I can't remember. I mean, we did as kids in Germany. I read a lot of Grimm's fairy tales. I knew most of them by heart, inside and out. We read a lot about that, or I read a lot with that. And then The Never-Ending Story was a huge impact that I didn't even realize that made itself into The Three Feathers, for example. I mean, without my knowledge afterwards, I realized, oh my God, the turtle is the turtle in Never-Ending Story.
I love it.
And so I think that was one of the big books, and then there are a bunch of other German books that didn't make it into translation from the same Michael Ende, the same author, that were also very, very they stayed with me for a very long time and they influenced me. And then you have those, also the Aesop's Fables, I think is that how you say it? Aesop?
Mm-hmm.
Right? We read a lot about those as well when I was a kid. So it was a fairy tale. There was a lot of fairy tale reading as a child. I mean, lots and lots. Everything was about that.
Do you see yourself ever returning to fables? Do you think that you'll ever write another book in the same vein as The Three Feathers? Not necessarily The Three Feathers Part 2, but do you see yourself ever going in that direction again?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's going to be a pure fable, but I like the medium because you can, it's very unpretentious. Because animals can, if you give a quality to a human, or if a human says something, it can sound a little like, oh, give me a break. But
right.
if an animal says it, you have all those, you don't have those preconceived notions, that I think it frees you, or it freed me so much in writing that my imagination just all of a sudden took off completely, and I said, you know what, I'm not going to put any limitations on the story at all. And it kind of soared for a while. It was really awesome. So I think for that, it's really a good medium, and I want to go back to it, maybe not fully, but half and half, maybe humans and animals together, like the Tales of the Apocalypse that was a really great outlet for that, right? I mean,
yeah, it really was. That's a great point that you brought up, because we think all the time, you read a book and you're like, well, I want my protagonist and my antagonist to be, I don't want them to be black and white. I want them to be, on this gray scale where the antagonist does horrible things, but he thinks he's doing good, and he, and the protagonist wants to do the right thing, but he's conflicted all the time, and we want all this texture and layer
right.
To our characters. But you're absolutely right. If you look at the Chronicles of Narnia, for instance, it's just the first example that came to my head. Reepicheep, the little mouse, mm-hmm. who is so full of bravery, and he's just that's all he is. He's got his little sword and he's ready to go to battle right now, all the time. And we love that about those characters. And I think some of that even bleeds over into our love of superheroes, maybe. And lately some of that's changing. We like our heroes to be more nuanced, but Superman used to be the tried and true, blue Boy Scout, and he was an alien, so we kind of expected things of him that he wasn't like us. So that's great. That would be a great device, I think, for bringing out some of those stark characters, is to put them in something that's not human.
Right.
That's excellent.
Yeah, because we don't have the preconceived notions about them. We don't If an 18-year-old girl goes through something, we kind of have that teen angst, that we kind of already project onto the character when we start reading. Oh, she's 18. We immediately have an image. But if we have like a wolf or any kind of animal or a rabbit, we kind of we give them a little bit more of a break. I think they can be more honest, they can speak more honest, and it doesn't sound hokey. They can be more truthful with their emotions, and it doesn't seem, dramatic, like, you know what I mean? It's different.
Yeah. You were talking about Casey a minute ago. You were talking about the 18-year-old girl protagonist. You've written The White Dragon has a female protagonist,
right.
As well as the fourth
Sage.
The Fourth Sage. Excuse me, I had a tickle in my throat. The Fourth Sage has a main female protagonist. Is it difficult for you to get in the head of a character of the opposite sex? Or was that easy? And did it open any creative avenues for you by kind of head hopping to someone that doesn't necessarily think the way you do?
I don't know. I'm asking myself the same question. I don't know really. I don't have an answer for that.
Because I'll tell you why I ask is I've had an idea for a story with a female protagonist, but I haven't trusted myself yet to write that.
Right.
I live in a house full of women. I live with 4 women.
So you can't say anything wrong.
Well, not only that, but I don't lack any input from women. I'm a constant observer of these girls and women and how they act and behave, and but I don't know that I trust myself yet to write that. Mm-hmm. So how do you feel about it?
I think you should do that, Hank, because you probably know so much more than an average person, because you're surrounded, as you said, if you have you get so much information that you probably don't even know you have. And you would probably make a really good writer for a female protagonist, because you have also so many personalities in your family. Between the girls, all of them together would make an amazing character. You should definitely try it.
I think I will.
I tell you, it would work.
I think I will. Yeah. So you're working on the second book of The White Dragon.
Yes.
You think you've got maybe a month left. Did I hear you say the other day that you were going to hold that book until you had the third one underway or finished?
I think so, because I feel like I'm... The first one is the story that takes place in this world on Long Island, and it's a very fast-paced 36 hours. You're being pushed through the ringer.
Right.
The second story is 3 years, and it's in a completely different world, as she becomes part of a tribe, like a very basic primal, like an Amazonian tribe, which is really, really cool, but you kind of lose a little bit the previous world with that. She loses that in herself, that previous world, her memories and all that stuff. And I feel like I wanted to give the reader the third book, which brings her back to Long Island, where she has to finish what she has started. And she has only 1 hour has gone by in the apocalyptic event, and she was 3 years into that other in that other world. So I want to finish the third, and then readers can read it through, and there is not that. I'm hoping there's not a disconnect between the two worlds so drastically that they can just continue on. So I thought I wanted to hold off on publishing it and then finish it really, really as fast as I can, the third one, and then put all 3 of them, or put the second and the third one out together, or maybe with a couple of weeks in between. I'm not 100% sure yet, but that was my thinking.
And what a great time it is that you have the freedom to do that.
I know.
And that you are as closely connected with your audience as you are, that you can start, preparing them that,
right.
Hey, I've got this big body of work that I'm going to bring to you, but I want to do it this way, and I would really appreciate you guys hanging with me,
right.
And supporting that. Man, what a great time we live in.
I know.
It's we had this brief conversation on Facebook with a couple of readers last night. I posted a status about Kindle Unlimited and how what a great value it is. 'Cause I was just looking yesterday and thinking, man, for $10 a month, there's absolutely no way I could read everything in here.
You're right. You're right.
I was laying in bed the other night flipping through on my Kindle while Dawn and I were laying there, and I was looking for something new to read, and I was just kind of overwhelmed, and I was like, oh man, I don't know where to start,
Right.
So anyway, some readers, just kind of, commented in, and it was so nice to hear that support from them, and that that sometimes it seems like this is a very solitary endeavor, but we do have this great kind of loose confederation of writers that support one another. But man, the readers, it's just such great people out there,
right.
That appreciate what you do, and it's such an honor to to get to do this and to live in the time that we do. It's amazing.
It's really, and in addition to that, your author story podcast, I think you've not even seen anything yet, because it was the first year, and you have already 70 something, right?
Yeah, this is episode 78.
78. So with no end in sight, and that also helps so many people get in touch with other people, authors with each other. Readers connect with authors, and readers connect with readers. I think it's a really great tool to create this community, which I think is the ultimate goal, to have this community of people that help each other out, through stories, or through reading their stories, or through feedback, and I mean, it's phenomenal.
Well, thank you for that. It really is a labor of love that we get to do this each week,
yeah.
And that's one reason I wanted to do some of these specialty shows where we talk more about the ins and outs and the day-to-day aspects of writing.
Right.
And if anybody has questions that they'd like for us to talk about, feel free to post those in the show notes or the blog. We'd be happy to. So yeah, thank you for that. That's it really has been phenomenal to watch.
Mm-hmm.
The relationships that I have made,
right.
Are invaluable,
right.
priceless.
Right.
I can't even begin to
right.
to quantify that. And if that's helped other people get together too, that's just even better.
Yeah.
That's amazing. But Stefan, do you have any closing thoughts? Any wisdom you'd like to impart, or anything that you would like people to be watching for?
I do. I have, when I was doing the screenwriting kind of classes and diving into the learning the craft and stuff, I was watching a DVD. It's called The Hero's Two Journeys. And it's Michael Hauge and Christopher Vogler. And Christopher Vogler made his name I don't know when it was, I think it was in the 80s. He wrote this memo because he studied Joseph Campbell. And he wrote this memo where he basically put Joseph Campbell's hero's journey into a template for Hollywood movies. And that memo he sent it to 5 people, and it reached every single studio in Hollywood. And many, many studios took on that framework now. They have it down to the point. So those two guys, Michael Hauge and Christopher Vogler, have a DVD, and it's called The Hero's Two Journeys. And you don't have to even buy the DVD. You can get the audio download for $5.99 on Amazon. You just put in The Hero's Two Journeys, and they talk about Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, Christopher Vogler in a workshop, and in the same workshop, right after him, each act, Michael Hauge then says, okay, and this is how you put it into the screenplay format or into any story. It's not screenplay. It's basically, you can do books, it's novels and screenplays. And that is such an amazing tool that I recommend that to everybody, and writer or just interested in story structure. This is one of the true highlights in that.
I will put a link to that in the show notes.
Great.
So that everybody can click on that and go get a copy. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
I'll do that today.
Yay.
Yeah. Thanks, Stefan, for being on the show. I appreciate it, and thank you for taking part in this first Author Stories Writers Workshop episode.
Awesome. Thanks, Hank. I'm honored to be the first one in this, and I'll be happy to come back anytime.
Excellent.